favorite things though is, I mean, we've been using video-based professional learning in my district. I was trying to count up. I think we're in year 5, I believe. So even just when we were putting this together, and as I'm hearing conversations from you guys, I'm already thinking about things that I can tweak in the way that we are implementing as well. So thank you for teaching me some things already. I love it. So I want to talk just a little bit about how we are utilizing video learning in our district and kind of our journey to where we are now. And then next year I'll have even more things to share because of what I've learned from you so far. But you know, as we were asking you earlier, do you have enough time to get into every single teacher's classroom? And nobody stood up. It's so crazy, right? And if you are a lot of us in district level positions, there's one of us who supports, like I support all of professional learning in my district of 3,500 teachers. So being able to really get a pulse on the needs of teachers by going out to classrooms every single day is not always the most realistic thing, right? And I know there are districts that are way bigger than us, that there's even bigger of a challenge. So this is definitely a tool that can help us get a pulse on what's happening in classrooms. And so we started just very small in Keller ISD. We decided we wanted to just pilot a small group. And actually that same year, we started a master teacher cohort. So we were like, oh, this would be just a great connection there. So I'm going to talk with you about how we kind of went from that to now supporting all of our new teachers as well, and just kind of some of the things that we've learned and some of the pitfalls and some of the successes that we've had, so that you can kind of utilize that as a stepping stone to continue to use this in your classroom. So feel next. So the year that we decided to try this out, I remember we were all sitting, all of the curriculum instruction, we were sitting in a room, and we were talking with a representative from Etienne, and he was showing us the platform. And we were like, oh, this is such a great tool, but who could we start with? Because we wanted to start this small group. And a colleague and I, like I said, at that same time, we were trying to find an outlet for our teacher leaders who did not want to leave the classroom. So we wanted to, really feed into those great educators that we did not want to leave the classroom, because we know administration is not always the pathway. Just because you're a great teacher doesn't mean you want to be an administrator, right? So we were really trying to put our heads together to figure out how could we give an outlet for these teachers where they have leadership on the district level, on the campus level. They're able to dig in deep to their craft and just continue to improve and create personalized professional learning for them. So we thought, wow, this would be a great tool to kind of add to that. And these are the teachers that are going to be willing to put themselves out there a little bit. So Ladder was born, which is our master teacher cohort. We started with 15 teachers in our Ladder cohort. And essentially, just to give you a little background of what Ladder is, we select a small group of teachers from all grade levels, all campuses, all content, and they basically create a personalized problem of practice that they work on throughout the entire year. We put them in cohorts based on that problem of practice. So if they're working on questioning levels or student engagement or whatever it is they might be working on, we try to put them with other teachers that are working on that same problem of practice, whether they're in the same grade level or not. One of our most effective cohorts had a pre-K teacher and an AP Bio teacher. And the AP Bio teacher, you know how high school teachers are, because I was one, like, what am I going to learn from a pre-K teacher? And then at the end of the year, she was like, oh my gosh, that was so good. So we decided that feedback was going to be a big piece of that, not only receiving it, but also giving it to each other. I don't know if you guys have heard other teachers say this. Our Ladder teachers say it all the time. A principal swipes in, stays there for 5 minutes, put some random feedback in. Maybe you get a response from them, maybe you don't. Nothing against principals, but we're busy, right? The teacher's not getting that specific feedback that they're asking for, right? Or the things that they really need to be working on as we're doing kind of those drive-bys. So we were trying to figure out a way, how can we kind of personalize and let these teachers dig in and work on these specific things? So one of the things that we decided they would do at the very outset of this is that they would try out our video coaching platform and record a video, a lesson that was kind of surrounded by or embedded in that problem of practice that they were working on. And within their cohort, they would watch each other's video, and give each other feedback on what they saw, but the teacher would also watch the video and reflect. So these are master teachers. These are teachers that, they're on their game. They just wanted to dig a little bit deeper. So that's really where we started. They were all so scared to record themselves. They were all like, I almost didn't apply because I didn't want to have to record myself. But at the end of the year, when we asked them what gave you the biggest impact, and it was watching myself on video. And after I heard that a couple of times, I was thinking, I'm also over first-year teachers, I was thinking, why am I not using this with my new teachers? And so that's when we decided to start dabbling in, let's try this with our newer teachers, give them some more structure and guidance, but have them at the very beginning of their careers starting to become more reflective on their teaching practices. And so that's when we decided to start implementing that with our first-year teachers. So what we do with those, and I have a handout for you guys. We have a choice board that I'll talk about a little bit, but we give them specific things to focus on in their videos, but also we give them some choice. So if there's something like, if they're struggling with transitions, let's record a 5-minute video on transitions. I'm gonna watch it, you'll watch it, let's have a discussion on what we're seeing. My favorite thing to do with a new teacher is to pop into their class, and when you see the hot mess class, right? And you're like, oh. And so then you sit down with the teacher and say, so how do you think that went? Because you want to hear where they are, right? And that's usually when I'll say, hey, do you want me to pop in and just record a quick video and then we can look at it and see what's going on? And sometimes that first video can be a little bit scary for them. So sometimes we'll offer up like, hey, I'll come in and record 10 minutes of your class. Tell me when you want me to come in, and then I'll just shoot that video to you, give you a chance to look at it, and then we can talk about the things that we're seeing. So we try to make it as easy as possible, right, to kind of get them in there. So if we can talk about the choice board a little bit, I'll sort of dig into what we do with our first year teachers just to get that comfort level so that they're not as scared to start this video process. So you do have the examples on your table. We also have a slide for you. But essentially we try, I've been able, luckily, to incentivize teachers who complete this choice board. And I have to say, this is not my idea. This was an idea that I stole from the Learning Forward conference a few years ago. So giving them opportunities to engage at their comfort level. And if they complete 50 points on this choice board, then I'm able currently to pay them 2 hours of extra duty pay. That is not a huge amount of money, but I always tell them, hey, you can go out to dinner, for engaging in that. So one thing you'll probably notice in phase 1 is we start with a very low stress activity. And that is just set up your account, which we're gonna help you with. I'll talk about that in a minute, but do a classroom tour. So get on do a little 3-minute classroom tour, show off your classroom, share it with your cohort, so we can get ideas of classroom setup from each other, but you're kind of getting used to using the platform, and we're not looking at how you're teaching, we're just looking at your classroom, right? So we start out very low stress, and they actually get 10 points just for doing that. And then they can comment on each other's videos as well and say, hey, I like how you've organized your sick work or your absent work, and they can kind of gain ideas from each other and kind of build each other up at the beginning. So we ask them to do that really right off the bat. So we'll see them for the first time in September, and we'll say, your first video this month, sometime after school, spend 5 minutes just giving us a classroom tour, right? Super easy. And so we get them comfortable there, and then we start digging them in. Okay, what's a strategy or activity that you would like to reflect on? Let's go ahead and record that. 5-10 minutes. It doesn't have to be a huge long thing, right? Maybe you want to share your video with your whole cohort. Maybe you want to keep it personal. Maybe you want to just share it with me, the coach, so I can give you an idea or give you some feedback on it as well. So we give them kind of that choice of their comfort level. But the number one key thing that I've learned with this piece, because the trust is so huge, is we've got to spend time at the beginning kind of building the foundation. So when we see them in September for the first time, we get them set up on their account. We have them kind of get on there and just say hi and just get used to it a little bit as we're all together, troubleshoot. But they also are sitting with their groups that they're going to share, their cohorts. So they kind of get to know each other face to face before they're possibly sharing videos with each other and giving each other feedback, right? So we only see each other four times a year. So it's important to build that community off the bat. So as you can see, as you're kind of going through the phases, we kind of make them go a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper. One is sharing with the cohort. Then let's do a reflection video. How did this impact you? Adam had mentioned what we call the video library, where we pull videos to share with the whole district. And so one of those is watch a video and fill out the reflection on what you saw. So there's all different ways that they can engage. And again, if they come up with the 50 points, they just turn this in at the end of the year, and then they get 2 extra duty hours in their June paycheck. So that's essentially kind of how we sort of engage them in this. Now, as we know, induction programs, I have no power, right? Like, I have lots of responsibility, but I can't tell them they have to do things. So it's really about encouraging, and I have our ladder teachers talk about the impact that it's made. And we do have, which we're gonna watch in just a minute, a video of one of our first year teachers talking about how video learning and video coaching kind of helped her through her first year. So we're gonna hear an actual teacher impact. My favorite teacher to talk about, just as a side note, and Adam knows her, she's been teaching my district for 30 years. And she tried out actually AI Coach, and her transformation over the last couple of years, just as she's become more and more aware of what's happening in her classroom and how she's teaching and how she's engaging students, I have never seen a transformation like this. And it all stemmed from her being a part of Ladder, but also really reflecting and watching herself in action. So she went from one of those students in rows, it was a science class, students don't talk, we don't collaborate, to now, I mean, just one of the most collaborative, reflective educators I've ever met. So transformative. I really wish I could have brought her to this conference so you guys could hear directly from her. She's just amazing. So I've definitely seen it on both our master teacher side as well as our new teachers, this transformation of watching themselves, reflecting, and then having conversations either with their peers or with myself, or even our first year teachers with their mentors. So it's been super impactful in our district.
She wasn't available because she's out presenting about
exactly.
the impact of video on her teaching.
She's out presenting for, yes, which conference is she at?
She's in Austin at a conference for charter school leaders,
yes,
talking about the impact that video reflection had on her as a teacher. Before we're about to show this video of the classroom tour, which I know we have next, but I want to add something that is like layered into something she's saying, right? Ooh. She's talking about introducing video as a tool for an entire cohort, right? So it's like the tool that we are using. So whatever that kind of cohort of teachers is, the tool that we use. And that's really important, right? Because it isn't, sometimes people think of video as this like targeted video coaching, video reflection, targeted strategy for my teachers who need a little something extra, right? That really pigeonholes video in a kind of negative way, rather than positioning it like Valerie's talking about as like, this is just part of our baseline of what whatever our cohort will be, we will be doing, right? And maybe that cohort is a whole district cohort transformation going on, or maybe it's select sets of teachers, opt-in or not. But it's really important, I think, to the way that kind of like appetite gets built over time, right? Because there's no stigma attached to it. It just is the thing that we do.
Yes, and I'm so glad you mentioned that too. I was actually talking with my supervisor last night. You guys know budgets are crazy, and so she was asking me to give some talking points for the board, and she was asking, so it's an administrative tool that principals go in and do walkthroughs. I was like, no, it's like the opposite of that. So gave her lots of great talking points. Don't worry about that. But our board was a little bit confused as to why we needed video for principals to come in. Can't they just come do walkthroughs? And so I was like, oh no, it is not about that. It is about teachers who want to dig in and reflect and get feedback. And so it's just interesting that automatically that's what we think, but it's not about that, right? It's about us digging in and looking at our own practice for the most part, and that's where the big impact comes from. Let's look at our classroom tour.
Good morning and welcome to the 5th grade class. Students are responsible for signing in and taking their own attendance when they arrive. Here's where they stash their book bags, and we have additional storage for their belongings. Arrival and dismissal procedures as well as line expectations are on the wall here. Here is our classroom sink, our mail system, and here is a mini library full of book sets for our literature circles. Just pretty great. We do communal supplies in these classrooms, so supply managers are responsible for doling these out. Reflection poster, where students write with stuff with them throughout the day. Up here we have our agenda, our calendar, and we're just starting to talk about good math conditions. Here's two of our meeting areas. This one has a smart board, and you can see that there's a great big space for students to gather on the carpet here. The library is this way. This is our second meeting area. Tons of books. All of them are labeled by genre. Just we have really specific ones here, like Little House books, Harry Potter, graphic novels, Babysitter Club, things they might be interested in. So we have fiction, nonfiction, more fiction over here. This is also doubles as a morning meeting area. So this is where the morning message will be, where the teacher sits. And we have our class constitution, which we just made the other day. This way, we will find a small group.
Awesome.
I'm going
Yes.
to stop it. Yeah, so I'll add some kind of color commentary to this video as an example of why classroom tours are so powerful. Because we get asked, what's a great way to introduce video learning? We always say, do the classroom tour, right? The obvious things, the video is pointed away from me. It feels very low risk. I don't have anything to coordinate. But this is high value for those colleagues that you're going to be collaborating with all throughout the year who may never physically visit your classroom. They now actually have a sense of what's happening in your learning environment, right? Even small things like, like when we meet in the library, my kids are really fidgety. Well, I noticed that there's no carpet on the floor in there, right? Like it could be even simple things like that, where like having someone who's external to your classroom have eyes into that learning environment is really just going to improve and enhance their understanding when they do get a chance to look at those videos with you.
It's great too. I love to watch them just because it gives me, I have 100 to 150 first year teachers each year. And so just to give me sort of just an insight of who they are, and you can see their personalities coming out in their classroom tours. And I love to make comments like, oh, I love how you have this anchor chart, whatever it might be. And it's just cool to watch them learning from each other as well. But like Adam said, I think it takes away that fear of it has to be this professional grade video. So that's what I always hear. Like, do I have to have a swivel? Do I need a mic? I'm like, no, throw your cell phone or your iPad at the back of the room. Set the timer on the app, which is my favorite thing, and have it record for 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be this big fancy production. And so that's one of my favorite things is like, this is real life. One of my ladder teachers, she was doing small group and she had her camera right here, and this little girl noticed the camera, so the whole time she was like, like just a little first grader. It was hilarious. They're like, oh. And I'm like, that's real life. That's what we deal with as teachers, and it's okay if you see that, right? My national board teachers, I have a cohort, they also use it to practice because in component 3, they have to record video. And, it's just because they are so used to doing this, it's just a practice that we do. Recording that video for national board is nothing. And so it takes, that's already a scary process anyway, but it takes away that piece of it. Like, oh, I know how to record a video in my class. I got that piece, right?
Just thinking about what you just said about that student. So we do video recordings, and so I was at a junior high, and at the beginning of the year, all these boys just put their
Yes.
they're still participating, like she was doing a small group thing, and they were answering questions and stuff, but by the end of the year, because you get in there so much, students get used to it. They're good, they're
yes.
down, they are engaged, they are doing their thing.
It's funny, the teenagers do not want to be on the camera.
Their transformation.
Yes.
This is just what we do.
Yes, I love
coming
that.
in again.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Elementary kids are like, yes, I'm on camera, and the middle school kids are like, no. Just some things that we've learned just kind of through the years, and like I said, I've learned even more, so I'm excited to kind of go back and start our planning for next year. But it's super important, as you guys obviously would know this, anytime we have a new tool of any sort, we need to give them time and training to play with it. And so I didn't mention that our friend COVID came about around the time that we started implementing this. And so the first couple of years with our first year teachers, I wasn't able to pull them together, right, as a group, because PD was a no-no, or even be in the same room with each other. And so it was really just, I sent them a video like, here's how you use it. And, our engagement, which I'll talk about in a second, wasn't great. I mean, we had a few, but it wasn't great. And so this last year, we were able to do full on. We get to do the whole induction program. We brought them together. They got to know each other. We practiced when we were all together. It made such a huge impact. So giving them time to do that. And then again, that classroom tour piece where they can just get comfortable with utilizing the video piece in their classroom. And I mentioned this before, but sometimes just saying, hey, I can pop in and film 10 minutes of your class if you need me to. Just tell me when a great time is, just to get that first video out of the way. Or even if I'm just doing pop-ins, if I see something happening, whether it's we need, some help or great things, I might just go ahead and record it and share it with them and say, hey, I was in there and I just grabbed this video while I was in there. We can look at it and talk about what we've seen. And then just like what Adam was talking about, we can't just say, okay, record a video and reflect on it, but actually spending time to say, okay, what are we looking for? I always think about, like, when I give my students a text, like, what is their reading purpose? What is it that we want to really focus on in this video? And so giving them kind of that structure and having that conversation with them as we go. And one thing that we found is we could have a video and then just do a quick Zoom with them if we weren't able to get to their classrooms. So some good things did come out of COVID, right? I mean, because now we can just do those quick virtual meetings, but we're able to talk through and watch that video together and talk about what we're seeing. But just as we, as I'm kind of comparing data, and I was able to sort of pull our data from last year and then this last year that we were in. So the years that we weren't able to, this was the 21-22 was our second year, but again, I wasn't able to pull our first year teachers at all together. So we had a total of 1,393 minutes of video, 142 videos, again, no modeling or time to train. And then this last year, I was excited to see our increase. We had 2,900 minutes of video and 362 videos submitted. Definitely still need to grow on that. But almost every single teacher at least submitted one and engaged in one video. So we are growing. It is definitely not, we're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we're getting more and more teachers engaged in this self-reflection practice. So I'm just happy to see that our numbers are going the right way. I even had, while I was here, a teacher emailed me and said, hey, can everybody have access to this video coaching? Because I really want this person to do it. And so, the word's kind of getting out there too, which is exciting. So Emily Vowles was, the most precious first-year teacher I think I've ever worked with. Yes, and I'm so proud of her because last year was her third year and she was teacher of the year on her campus. She was just reflective from day one. And so when we were talking about, we need to hear from a teacher, I was like, I know exactly the video. So we just want to hear from Emily a little bit.
Hi, so I'm posting this video to be able to share how I've been using it as a reflection tool in my classroom and conforming with my instruction. And I think the biggest thing that Ava has done for me, or just as to how what is done, is be able to be eyes to see myself with, and that has allowed me to see myself a lot more clearly, which is super helpful. And it has shown me oh wow, there could have been a lot more clarity in the way I delivered this certain topic, or the way I introduced this skill, or it makes sense that the students didn't understand this because I don't think I was really quite conveying what I wanted to in some certain senses. But it's also shown me opportunities where I could push my students further with questioning, or with oh wow, they really get that. I can just push into that topic a little bit deeper. I think it's given me some insight on that as well. And just an understanding of my students' comprehension, they're not quite getting it, but I think watching myself teaching it real time, I'm able to see sometimes you can tell and you can remember this specific skill is the thing they're struggling with. But in one of the videos I posted, I was working with a student on understanding, and you notice just I really don't think that she is understanding the vocabulary. I think she gets the concept. And so after watching that, I was yeah, that's true. So I think that has been really super helpful as well. I also think it's been encouraging as well, because sometimes if Like a day was hard. I can remember all of the things that were challenging about the day, but like looking at the lesson and thinking, oh wow, that was engaging. Like they were listening and learning what I was teaching that lesson.
First year teacher. Like, she was a first year teacher. I mean, precious. She taught kindergarten. Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to say she still teaches kindergarten, but she's amazing. She's amazing.
So before we leave you, and this has been, some of the conversations happening, but just a reminder that when you're asking teachers to utilize video for their professional learning, and even when you say this is a team sport, we're all doing it together, you think you're asking them to participate on this team, right? And they feel like you're asking them to be this person, right? So just create those safe opportunities to practice. Make sure that if you don't land the landing the first time, that it's a really soft landing place to land, right? Low stakes, letting them do it for themselves, all those types of things. It's really important for the success of video becoming systematic instead of it being that in that experimental phase that everybody said they're starting at.